a US delegation in Ukraine to help strengthen the country's air defences. President Putin says pictures like these, released today by the Ukrainian government, prove his point. Such cooperation is a threat to Russia, NATO interfering in his backyard. The Americans and Ukrainians say they're not the aggressors. Satellite images from the last 2 months show Russian battle groups training near the border. Ground forces have been deployed, a build-up that the US and Ukraine fear could be a prelude to a Russian invasion. Today's virtual summit was supposed to calm things down, hence President Biden's friendly opening gambit.
There you go.
Hello.
Добрый день.
Good to see you again. Unfortunately, last time we didn't get to see one another at the G20. I hope next time we meet, we do it in person.
President Putin was giving little away. On Russian TV last night, his spokesman invoked Hercules' impossible mission to scrub the mess in the Aegean stables.
It is very hard to expect the talks to produce any breakthroughs. The Aegean stables of our bilateral relations can hardly be cleaned up over a few hours of negotiations.
Citing history, President Putin regards Ukraine and Belarus as rightfully part of Russia. While Belarus remains a Russian satellite state, Ukraine became fully independent at the end of the Cold War. In 2014, Russia seized Crimea, while Russian-backed separatists took control of eastern Ukraine. Now, once again, Russia has moved troops and armour to the border with Ukraine. In response, President Biden has said he might reinforce troops on NATO's eastern flank in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and even possibly Poland. Before the summit, President Biden visited a World War II memorial on the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. The Soviet Union and the US fought on the same side then. Biden has threatened serious economic sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine, and will not fulfill Putin's demand for a pledge that Ukraine must never join NATO.
Creating such threat poses a red line for us, but I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that common sense and responsibility for both our countries and the world community will prevail.
Yesterday, the Ukrainian president visited his forces on the front line with Russia. They've been dug into trenches since the war in 2014. Ukrainian troops are better equipped and trained now because of military assistance from the US, the UK and other NATO countries. But they could never resist a Russian invasion alone. Winter in Moscow. Western leaders have threatened to ban Russia from the SWIFT international transaction system and to sanction the new Nord Stream 2 pipeline transporting gas to Europe. If today's summit is unsuccessful, relations between NATO countries and Russia could get a lot more frosty.
Lindsay Hilson. Well, I spoke to Latvia's Foreign Minister, Edgar Rinkevičs, a short time ago, and began by asking him how concerned he is that Russia might invade Ukraine.
I think that there is considerable risk, taking into account the military mobilization near Ukrainian borders by Russian military, and also a very harsh rhetoric from Russian officials, but also propaganda outlets in Russia are actually somehow preparing people for some kind of war or military action. So the risk is considerable.
And what is the danger to Latvia?
There is no immediate danger. We don't have anything better than NATO membership for security. There are no better organizations, better alliances as this one. So I don't believe that Russia is prepared to challenge NATO. But I think that if we don't resist in all ways possible to this kind of ruining security architecture in Europe, the temptation can, of course, grow.
But how do you read the consequences of Russia invading Ukraine? I mean, what would the immediate consequences be?
Well, the problem is, answer the question, what is the Russia's intention, is a president of Russia. If there is a real military aggression, economic, sanctions, political pressure, obviously cutting a lot of ties with Russia that still exist. In our part of Europe, then I would say that we definitely want to see reinforcement of NATO troops in order to avoid any kind of temptation by anyone in Russia to try and to test the resolve of NATO already on its own territory.
But you and I, although we're of different generations, neither of us have really experienced anything like this kind of aggression.
There has not been such a direct threat of full-scale military action or warfare, maybe even since the end of the World War II. Yes, there were some crises, Caribbean missile crisis or Berlin, but in this respect, I do believe that the situation is dangerous, but I also hope that some diplomatic, political efforts and also sending clear signal what the price tag, economic price tag, also military price tag is going to be, could help.
What do you read in Putin's intentions? I mean, why do they want Ukraine?
You know, Russia still is the country that remembers the imperial period. And that was much bigger country.
And they want it back?
And I think that they want, if not the Russian Empire, if not the whole Soviet Union, they want to come back to greater Russia that is impossible to create without Ukraine.
And do you therefore want to see Western forces, NATO in particular, protecting your border?
They do this, and we are very grateful to all our NATO allies, including the United Kingdom, for that.
But it would require even stronger presence than they have now. Are you prepared for that?
But if things are getting worse, then yes, indeed, we see that we need to reinforce those forces. Yes, absolutely.
Do you actually think there is a real prospect of serious war now?
Let me say this. I hope no. But we also need to be realistic and prepared for all scenarios.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much for
Thank you very
talking
much.
to us.